Decisions, decisions, decisions. On a daily basis, we're forced to have to make several of them. From a pick of clothes for the day to our next meal. We live in a world where we're spoiled for choice. And while these smaller decisions seem tedious, the more weighty ones that have an impact on our future lives can seem dreadful. So, how do you choose correctly when there is so much at stake? Well, simply put, making decisions with overarching ramifications isn't easy. There's no magical formula that will tell you exactly what you need to do. Coming to a conclusive answer requires both reasoning and feeling, and is a combination that takes personal effort. And when many of us don't even know what we want, making important life decisions can be paralyzing. So, to get to the core of the matter, we need to first look inwards and answer the question, who am I, before we get to, how do I know what I want? For that, we need to set aside all philosophical considerations from the former and simply look at the identities that make us who we are. Well, let's get started. Perhaps one of the most useful exercises I've encountered for deconstructing the self is from Existential Psychotherapist Irvin Yalom. In his book, Existential Psychotherapy, Yalom details an exercise where he asks us to write down our answers to the question, who am I, on several cards, be it a word or a sentence. He then asks us to arrange his cards in a hierarchy with the least important identifiers at the top and most important at the bottom. Now, whenever I do this exercise, I limit myself to 10 answers and arrange them in the form of a pyramid. This way, I have one card at the top, which is the least important, and 4 at the bottom, which are the most important. Noting down 10 characteristics also means that you need to think carefully about what you believe really defines who you are. Now, once we've finished, Yalom then invites us to take a moment and have a good look at what we've written down. In essence, this is who we're supposed to be. We are the sum of these characteristics and descriptions laid out in front of us. Of course, this is an extremely simplified version of ourselves. Human personalities are complex, so also consider this an exercise in efficiency. Now we get to the more interesting part of the exercise. Yalom asks us to take away one card at a time, starting from the top, and imagine that with each card gone, what we've written down is no longer a part of who we are. And while doing so, it's important that we note how we feel. Is there a sense of discomfort? Perhaps. After all, we're quietly stripping ourselves of everything that is important to our core identity. It's meant to feel a bit strange. Yet, here's the beauty of this simple exercise. As we've broken down all constructs of identity, we're left with nothing. We're no longer the person that existed a mere 10 minutes before. Whatever role we've adopted in our lives, be it a parent, a teacher, or an introvert, has now dissipated. Only the experience of being is left behind. And this is ultimately who we really are, without all the multiple identities we've thrust upon ourselves during the course of our lives. We are, in essence, a being solely existing in this moment. This is all we can ever be sure of. But the most powerful takeaway from this exercise is the perspective it gives us over our own lives. Is our bad grade really worth several sleepless nights over? Does it really matter what the neighbors might think about the old car you drive? Probably not. Identities are important because they ground us in the world we're enmeshed in and help us extricate meaning in our lives. But we shouldn't be overly consumed by these constructs. And that's exactly what they are. Constructs, labels, identities. However we may call it, we have to remember that all that matters is the moment we're currently in. This moment, the one you're experiencing right now. Nothing else. Now that we know what it feels like to break away from appointed identities and experience life in its unadulterated form, we may ask ourselves, now what? How do we proceed from this point on and make choices that align with our best interests? Well, we can start by first examining our feelings as we've reduced ourselves to a being in this world. If we feel unburdened, lighter, or even relieved, it could be useful to reassess some of the identities we carry with us on a daily basis. It's vital that we take heed of the feelings we encounter. And looking at some of the labels we've given ourselves, there may be a few we might not feel content with. Now is when we have the opportunity to discard any identity we may not want to carry with us further. But sometimes this may not be an easy task. Not all of us have the luxury to simply discard our responsibilities or given circumstances in order to fulfill our own wishes at any cost. That's okay. At any rate, we can take a moment to think about ways in which we can mold that identity for the better. It doesn't have to be all that bad. We can also look at ways that particular characteristic has influenced the person we are today, and hopefully we're able to find a sense of acceptance. However, if we're entirely comfortable with ourselves, with attributes that we may not like, but regardless make up who we are, then we can use our responses in this exercise as a guide to assessing future decisions. For example, let's say that you wrote down that you're a person who likes to think a lot. Then maybe when it comes to choosing a career path, you may want to find something that allows you to do just that. Perhaps you could find a new vocation in the humanities or social sciences. This can also transcend into other aspects of your life. If you happen to write down that you are defined by your role as a parent, then you could always make decisions that align with that core identity. It could be a choice that is made with your child in mind. Or maybe you define yourself as quiet and introverted and enjoy mingling in smaller crowds. All your future decisions could be based on this one defining trait: your job, your partner, hobbies, etc. Ultimately, what matters is that we first know who we are before we can begin to know what we want. And by laying ourselves bare, we have a chance to examine our own lives. It's not too often that we find ourselves with the opportunity to do just that. So it's important that we take the time to pause and get to know ourselves a bit better. The faster we do that, the faster we can do what we feel is important to us, rather than waste precious time being preoccupied trying to fit in or please others. Life is way too short for that.